Hello, everyone. This is Nanette Polito, a success consultant here in the greater Cincinnati, Northern Kentucky area, partner, and just so happy to be back here with you this month where I can actually talk to you, because last month I had a little audio version and problems, and luckily Mike picked up the ball for me, so thank you very much, Mike. But it's great to have you all back here today. If you don't know what we're going to be talking about, we're going to be talking about mastering your calendar. A couple things, please make sure this is a live video, so we want to make sure that you get your questions in. So please go to your dashboard in the question area and type any questions you have, because I will be sure to relay them on for you. We have with me today, I actually have two of my favorite people with me, and the first is, of course, Dr. Ivan Misner, who is the co-founder of Asentiv and is recognized as the world's leading expert on business networking, but of course we pretty much know that and we love him for that, and referral marketing. Along with those skills, he brings his expertise and wisdom of growing a small business that he started in his garage and turning it into a global brand. And so we all know it's just an amazing thing. So Dr. Ivan Misner also co-founded Asentiv to make his decades of experience accessible to today's entrepreneurs, and we are really grateful for that. And then I have Mike Macedonio with me, who of course is a New York Times best-selling author and also a co-founder of Asentiv. And Mike is an expert in business marketing, but one of the things that I really wanted to give everybody a chance to just hear from Mike for 1 second, because our Asentiv headquarters is actually in Santa Rosa, California, where Mike actually lives. And his home was in and around the area of the fires. And I know some of you are probably wondering how they're doing and how the area is doing. So before we get into mastering our calendar today, Mike, could you give everyone kind of an update of how everything is going there and any way we can help you?
Yeah, thank you, Nat. My wife and I were very fortunate that our home was spared, and obviously we're safe, and a number of our friends are the same way. But unfortunately, there was massive devastation through the city, with thousands of homes destroyed, and even more people's lives affected. There's a lot of support here right now. I've been meeting with firefighters from Oregon, and just people from all over, literally the world. Even Australia have come in to support us. But my biggest concern right now is actually not just the people that have been displaced, but they feel like the city's walking around numb. Business people are paralyzed, and I'm trying to organize a team right now of people that will help support them and get them moving forward, get the business restarted or ramped up again, because this terrible event has affected a lot of people, even people that have survived with their safety in their homes. So that's our initiative, and I look forward to making that happen in this community.
So, Mike, I would ask you if there's any way any of us can help you out in that.
Yes, so certainly connect with me either on Facebook, or my email is mike@asentiv.com. Connect with me. I'm looking to put together a group of coaches, and we can do virtual coaching, and I'll probably have some live coaching. If you'd like to participate in that, please send me your information. I'd be happy to include you.
Awesome. Well, you just know that you are in our prayers, and everyone around you is in our prayers, and we know Santa Rosa will come back. If for the people out there, if you've never been to that area, it is the Sonoma wine region. It is absolutely an amazing place to visit. And the best way you can help those people is go back and visit, because that's what they want you to do, because that's going to help them come back, because they're going to see the love and support and everyone that's there. And when we just go back, that'll really just help that start out. So. But with that, we have a great topic today, and it is about mastering your calendar. I know that there have been times when my calendar's gotten away from me, and I'm sure there's times when your calendar's gotten away from me. So with that, I am going to turn it over to Mike and Ivan, and guys, teach these people how to master their calendar.
It's up to you, Mike.
All right, Nanette, if you can bring up the next slide. Okay.
Next slide.
Thank you, and the one after that. And the first part we're going to talk about is what we refer to as big rocks first. Mastering your calendar is really all about planning first. Planning what you're going to do rather than letting your calendar dictate to you what you're doing next. And the big rock concept is, imagine your calendar is completely blank. Now, I know that sounds like a fantasy, and you might even have to go out a year or two and have a blank calendar. And the question is, what goes in first? And this is an exercise that my wife and I do, and we also do in our business when we're planning for the following year. What are the most important things that are going to go in that calendar first? Now, it's interesting how when I've done this with audiences, I get different responses. For example, here in the States, when I do this, a lot of people look at business critical things first. What are the most important things in my business that I need to do? And that's really not what goes in the calendar first. First thing that goes in the calendar should be what's most important, and that should be you and your family. And many people won't think of, no, my vacation goes in first, my personal time, anniversary, birthdays, to make sure that goes in first. Now, I say different audiences have different responses because I did this last week in Italy with a group of Italians and other Europeans, and they immediately said, personal stuff first. So there's a different value perception there, and I think that's important, that big rocks go in first. Those are the personal things, and then we can start looking at, okay, in my business, what's most important? And for me, for example, conferences would go in there. Conferences aren't the thing that I can work around my schedule. There's other people involved, and so I want to make sure that I know what those are, get those blocked out. Okay, then I can start putting in the smaller rocks and eventually the sand, so that I can fill up my calendar. Ivan, do you have any big rocks that are important that goes into your calendar?
Well, it's got to be family, like you said, and I'll give you a very specific example. Vacation time. I generally schedule vacation time at least a year in advance, sometimes more. And so I book that out to make sure that other stuff doesn't encroach on it. And also events. So I speak a lot, so I put those in my calendar. I'm booked out usually 2 years or more in advance, so I put those in my calendar far in advance so that I can coordinate the big rocks.
Yeah, one of the things my wife Dawn does is she puts in Dawn days, and once a month it's a day for her. For example, this just happens to be a Dawn day. Okay, and she will start off with Dawn activities. She's going to massage, facial, and all of those types of things that are going to be part of her just recharging. And if that's not in the calendar and she's trying to stick that around her busy schedule, it's probably going to get postponed or not happen.
It's funny you say that. I don't know if Beth got that from Dawn or Dawn got that from Beth, but Beth has Beth days. And sometimes the Beth days I'm involved with. So, it's taking her to a museum. Hey, honey, I want a Beth day. Okay, when? And sometimes I'm involved in it, but you gotta schedule that stuff in, otherwise it just doesn't happen.
Yeah, and it sounds counterproductive, but actually doing that type of stuff and having your own time is actually going to make you more productive in the other stuff that you're doing for your business or your life.
Let me share one thing to you. I don't think I've ever told anybody this. It was an experience that Beth and I had. We were at a restaurant, and okay, I'm going to get old school on you. This was at least 20 years ago, and we had actual physical calendars. And we were at a restaurant, we're having a nice dinner, and we pulled out our calendars, and we were actually scheduling in our calendars things like Beth days and date nights, and we were comparing calendars as to when I'm traveling, when I'm not traveling. We're just going through the calendars, and it was so sweet. This I say older woman, she's probably my age now. She's probably what I am now. Came on up to the two of us, and this was probably 25 years ago. And she said, I sat here and I watched as the two of you did your calendar together. And I got to tell you, if my husband and I had done something like that, we'd probably still be married. Mm. And she said, I just think that is so awesome that you, I was expecting her to say it was weird, that we're sitting down at dinner and working our calendars out. But she said, just watching the two of you work together and set your calendar, she said it was really sweet. And I was impressed by that here was somebody who thought that was really important and it made an impact on me, but I don't think I've ever shared that.
Because you were really sharing your life, but planning it.
Yeah, we weren't just, it wasn't the tail wagging the dog. There's enough of that in life without some plans.
Mm-hmm. Okay. All right. Well, Nanette, let's get on to the next topic. So we talked about the big rocks.
So the next topic is about mastering your calendar. And what I want to say here is that some of the things that we're talking about, you may listen to and you may go, yeah, that's not me. I can't do this. Okay, here's what I suggest. Keep an open mind. Hear what we're talking about. And if it resonates with you, start to incorporate it. If it doesn't, not every idea we give has to be a home run. You don't have to do it all. Our goal here is to give you techniques that we've used and we've used successfully. This is an important one for me, a really important one for me. And I've done this for such a long time. As soon as Outlook had color coding, I color coded my calendar. And if you look closely at this calendar, it's got things in there like work on an entrepreneur article, do a Skype call with Mike, do a Zoom meeting, prep for a radio interview. So what I do is I color code all of my activities based on a handful of categories: writing, phone calls, training, interviews. They're all different colors. There might be themes, because green is one theme for me, and I'll talk about that in a moment. There's red. Red is bad, very bad. I don't like seeing red in my calendar. There's usually lawyers or accountants involved when there's red. So it's something that is supposed to jump out and hit me, and it's not necessarily something I love doing, but it's got to be dealt with. It might be face-to-face meetings, travel. I actually color code all of these things so that I could look at my day and have a sense pretty quickly as to what my day is. There's one thing on this particular, this is a cut and paste right out of my calendar. There's one thing that's not in this. I always put an asterisk after any of the topics if there is an attachment inside I need to open up. So when I have an asterisk in there, then I know I have to open that up and look at something to have it. So I may have notes or something like that. If you can go to the next slide. My goal is to have days like this. I call this a green day. And there's 3 or 4 different variations of green. For me, all of the things that I'm passionate about, that I love to do, that I should be doing, are in some variation of green. Writing, interviews, training, strategic planning. So this was a green day for me. My wife understands this so well that in the morning, almost every morning, she'll say, "So, do you have a green day today?" And this is a fantastic way for me to make sure that I'm blocking off time to do the things that I should be doing and that I love doing. Mike, anything you want to add to that?
No, I do love the green day. The green day is actually you working in your flame, and I'm thinking the green represents profitability. Things that are most important, most productive.
Yeah, most productive. Yeah, and they seem to have more variations of green than any other color, and so it was one of the other reasons. It was perfect.
Yeah.
Green for me means I'm heading towards all my goals. So all those things on my calendar, greens, means that's going to help me accomplish a goal.
Cool.
Right. Okay, the next topic we're going to talk about is setting boundaries into your calendar. And this is something that I feel very strongly about, that at some point in my day, there has to be a time where I say, that's it. Okay, I'm done working, and now I move on to something personal or moving on with my family. Now, just like Ivan mentioned, if some of the stuff resonates with you, great. If some of this stuff is just so far out of reality, possibly because of your industry or where you are right now, it's okay, right? So what Ivan and I are going to share in terms of some of our boundaries may not apply to your life. Okay? But the way I plan my calendar is my evenings are for my family. Okay? I do not book meetings in the evenings. I also do not book meetings on the weekends. And they're like, you're way too busy. How can you not have to work on weekends? How can you not have to work in the evenings? I said, well, those are my boundaries. Now, here's something you need to understand. I also reserve the right to make exceptions. For example, we were just recently in Italy. Well, we had traveled a long way, and people were there for us. And yeah, we did make ourselves available in the evening, and that's perfectly okay. When we host conferences, people come a long way to spend time with Asentiv, and we make ourselves available in the evenings. A lot of times we're cooking dinner for the crew. Ivan, I can remember being with you when you were in Southern California, and at the end of the day, we'd be at BNI headquarters, and you were like, okay, it's time to go home for dinner. And Beth's waiting for me, and my family's there. And that was regimented. Okay, and I hope you don't mind me saying this, but I also remember back in another life where I would come to BNI conferences in the 90s, and they said, you have a one-to-one with Ivan? Yes, at 2:30 in the morning. Was that a boundary or an exception?
No question about it. That was an exception. I don't generally have meetings. I may write in the wee hours of the morning, but I don't usually have meetings at the wee hours. It was absolutely an exception, and here's the reason why I had the exception. I only saw people, many people, twice a year at the conferences or convention, and so I felt it was very important to have one-to-one time with people, and so I did one-to-one dance cards and meetings until 2. I think 2:30 was about the latest I would do one. But we were talking about this before we went on. I mean, I actually had people show up to in the hotel room, my suite. They'd be in bathrobes and pajamas, and they'd come and meet with me. So I couldn't agree with you more. I really had I was strong about being home for dinner every night with the family. You got to set boundaries and don't, whatever boundaries work for you, and don't let people in there unless it fits those exceptions that you kind of set in advance. Don't set the exceptions on the fly.
Yeah. I was talking with a gentleman last week. We were going through the exercise of calendaring. We were talking about boundaries. And his simple boundary was that he was going to basically call it at 5:30 p.m. that he can get everything he needed to get done. That was important. That couldn't be put off till tomorrow by 5:30. And I asked him, I said, so what difference does that make? He says, well, that's a half hour sooner than I normally leave. I said, so it sounds relatively small and insignificant, right? He goes, yeah, I guess so. I said, times 5, 2.5 hours, times 48, 50 weeks a year. And we calculated how much time he was holding back himself. I said, what are you going to do with it? And of course, it was reinvested into the family and reinvested into himself. And I'm like, no, that's significant.
That's significant. The other thing that we talked about before we went live is the fact that this definitely may not work for some people. For example, a real estate agent, a residential real estate agent that's not available on weekends is an ex-residential real estate agent. So you got to apply these concepts to your profession. Maybe for a real estate agent, it's the morning you're going to make sure and take the kids to school or pick them up from school. But you got to be available on weekends. So you got to apply these concepts we're talking about to your profession.
Yeah, great point. Right, now next topic, Nanette.
The next topic is a fun one, time vampires. And we've all had these people in our life, and the time vampires really began with the previous topic, which is creating boundaries. And for me, I try to create a no drama, little emotion, very little emotion rule, where I try to avoid gossip gremlins. When people start doing gossip to me, I just tell them, look, is there anything that you're about to tell me that is relevant to me that I can help with somehow? Otherwise, I'm the wrong guy to be sharing this with. Or if they'll say, I'm gonna tell you something, but you can't tell anyone. I'm like, then don't tell me. then don't tell me, because if you're going to tell me about a problem and then you tell me I can't do anything about it, you're just basically, handcuffing me. So these are some of the kinds of things. Setting office hours. I think that's really important, is to set office hours and say this is when you can reach me or can't reach me. And here's the other thing with when you're dealing with time vampires, is understand the concept of urgent versus important. So if you drew a big box and you did 4 quadrants, in one quadrant you'd have urgent and important. In another box, on top of the box, you'd have urgent but not important. On the bottom, you'd have not urgent but important, and in the bottom left, it'd be not urgent and not important. And so if you take a look at things that end up on your desk, you got to ask yourself, which quadrant do these fall in? By the way, if it falls in the not urgent, not important category, this is where it generally goes, is in my trash can. If it's not urgent, not important, I have no business doing it. And so I will hand it off to someone else. You want to stay away from the time vampires that are bringing things that are urgent and important to you, but not urgent and important to me. You know what I mean? In other words, if I bring something to you and it's urgent and important to me, but it's not urgent and important to you, you got to recognize that. And this is where time vampires are masters. They bring you their problem and have an expectation that you're going to solve an issue that's just not urgent to you. And don't get sucked into dealing with those issues that are not urgent and important, or at least important to you. Does that make sense?
It does. Ivan, I know one of the things you do when you're calendaring or a meeting is you set expectations. I've got my next appointment in 45 minutes. I need to be on an interview. And so the expectations that we're going to get what we need to get done in this amount of time. And I think that's important to set the context.
Yeah, and I do that with most of my phone calls, but I always do it when I have somebody that I think is a time vampire, and they just always take up a lot of time. I'll let them know, look, and I do this with almost everyone. So if anyone's listening to this and they say, hey, wait a minute, he's done that to me, it doesn't mean you're a time vampire. But I definitely do it with the time vampires. I got a hard stop in 30 minutes, so let's focus here on what needs to be addressed.
Yeah. Well, one of the ways I get to use that is when people coming with a high level of drama. You tell there's a lot of emotion behind something, and to frame it and say, listen, I've got 10 minutes. Can you give me 2 minutes of the highlight, and then let's take 8 minutes to talk about how we're going to solve this, what the solutions are. And I think that is not only a way of controlling the time, but really make the best use of that time.
Yeah, and I would, with employees in particular, I would say, don't ever come into me with a problem unless you have at least 2 suggested solutions, with one of them being your recommendation. Come into me with every problem you feel I need to hear. I'm happy to talk through these problems, but don't just hand the problem over to me without some potential solutions. And that did 2 things. One, it reduced the number of people who came into me because they thought through the problems themselves, and many of them told me eventually they got to the point where I kind of figured out the solution and I didn't need to come bother you. And the ones who did come in to present a problem really thought through the solutions, so we got to the issue pretty well. And oftentimes, by the way, I almost always took their recommendation. I'd say, well, that's a great recommendation. That's perfect. I don't think I'd do anything different. Or here's a little thing I would add to it. That ends up reducing the conversation from a 30-minute conversation to a 10 or 15-minute conversation.
So I have a question for both of you, because I know some of the people that are going to be watching this are going to be people who are in a service industry. So it might be insurance agents or mortgage loan officers, where people call up and it's their clients, and their clients are like, oh my God, this has to be taken care of. So they transfer, as you said, Ivan, their urgency onto you, but this really isn't the urgent problem right this second. How do you handle that? Because in your head, you do want to drop and take care of them, but you know in your heart that's not what you're supposed to be doing.
Yeah, well, look, that happens with great regularity in many professions. It certainly happens in mine. So first, people mostly reach out to me these days through email, and they'll tell me about this issue. It would also work by phone by saying, what I say to them is, this is clearly an important issue. It's, certainly to them, if not you, is clearly an important issue. Give me some of the details and give me a little time to see if I can help you resolve it. And I promise I'll get back to you by the end of the day, or I promise I'll get back to you the first thing in the morning. So that you take their issue, you acknowledge that they're worried about it, and you get back with them with a solution when it's a little more convenient than constantly responding to every call that comes in, which is actually something that I think we're going to talk about in a few minutes, taking calls for every call that comes in to you. Now, again, some professions are different than others. I get that. And one of the things I tell the member services people in BNI is if you get an email where somebody is mad as a hornet and you just have no time to respond to it, you tell them, got your message. I really am glad you sent this to me. I promise you I will get back to you within 24 hours. And most people are reasonable. Most people go, okay, all right, fine. I can wait for 24 hours. But then, by God, you better get back to them in 23 hours. Because if you're 24 hours and 10 minutes, they're going to email you.
Exactly.
And, you know, it's a bad analogy. We're talking about putting out fires. And the people are coming in with these problems. There's something I learned recently in coaching school, that venting is not productive. No. And when we let clients or people around us vent, okay, we're not serving them. Okay, in reality is when we allow people to vent and talk about these problems, the only thing that actually happens from that is we make it worse because we add energy to it. And what we really need to do is to get them away from that and start thinking, like you mentioned earlier, Ivan, solutions.
Yeah.
Can
I add, sometimes though you do need to let them vent just a little, because if they don't feel like they're heard, then they just get mad. So you let them vent a little. At some point they have to take a breath. And that's where I like to say, okay, I think I have a sense of what you're talking about. How can I help you with this? And then then you got them focused on the solution. And they may go, I don't know, you're the expert. Great. I am the expert. Let me tell you what I think we can do. And then you get them focused right away on the solution.
Exactly.
All right.
Good. Next slide.
The next thing we're going to talk about. Yeah, the next thing we're going to talk about is unreasonable access to you. Allowing people to come into your calendar or intruding whatever you have working on. And, you know, in today's day and age, technology is such a blessing, and at the same time, it's also a curse. It's a curse if we don't manage. And, you know, that curse usually comes in a little square thing that's very thin and can just completely take over our lives. And again, if your industry, your business doesn't allow this, if you are saving lives, any of those type of things, what I'm going to talk about next may not apply completely. I believe that these devices are helpful, and my personal belief is that I don't need to give the population access to me by cell phone, by text message, by WhatsApp. I'm happy to set up appointments. I'd rather speak to a person over the phone or video conference or in person. Okay? But allowing people to text message me and usually having an expectation that there's going to be an immediate response. Most of the things you need to respond to are probably not best done with your thumbs. And so this is one of the areas where I feel that it's helpful, again, to set boundaries of how people have access to you, when people have access to you, and what's the most appropriate way for people to get on your calendar. I know that sounds extreme. I will tell you there's less than 12 people that have access or need to have access to me by cell phone. I don't believe that's a way of serving the people that I want to serve and making the best use of my time. Ivan, of course, I take your cell phone number for your phone calls, but that is rare. This kind of comes back to the old open door philosophy. You know, my office doors open, and I know that's just a concept, not reality. But there are people that allow people in their office, okay, or into their calendar, into their world, okay, without boundaries. And you will never have control of your life, your production, or your calendar if that is the case. And in reality, what happens is you cannot serve the people that you're intending to serve at the time if you're allowing constant interruptions. I know that sounded a little strong.
No, you're absolutely right. And again, it depends on the profession and it depends on the situation. But generally speaking, here's the bottom line. If you want to scale your business, if you want to be a solopreneur for the rest of your life, take every phone call you get. And you'll be running around, you'll be letting the tail wag the dog. And you'll be a solopreneur. If you want to scale your business, you have to control your calendar. And so it does sound tough, Mike, but if you want to scale your business, you have to. I remember it was in San Dimas, probably 20 years ago or more, my San Dimas office for BNI, where I was just, it was like a three-ring circus. The phone was ringing constantly, and I had people waiting on hold for me. And I remember telling my assistant, we're going to have a change. Everyone who talks to me now is going to have an appointment. And that's going to be a real culture shift because people are going to get really upset. And so I sent out an email saying, this is what I got to do just to manage my time and schedule. And they got really mad at first. But this is what I told them. And it's great advice for you to use if you want to try to get people to not have unreasonable access to you. We would set the appointment and we would say, here's the advantage of having an appointment with Ivan. And it could be even later today. You know, it's 10 o'clock in the morning. He'll be available at 11. He'll be available at 1, okay, today, or first thing tomorrow. Here's the advantage. He will give you his undivided attention. If I try to slip you in right now, he's in the middle of something, and I promise you, his attention's going to be drawn elsewhere. But if you set an appointment with him, he will sit there and you will have his undivided attention. It was amazing how that worked. People are like, oh, okay, well, that's kind of important. Great. And once I did that, it worked reasonably well. And then that's really the point at which I became a zealot about color coding my calendar and making sure that every phone call was blocked in there.
I think that's an important point, that it sounds like we're being unaccessible. In actuality, what we're doing is making ourselves accessible when we can give them the time and attention they deserve. And along with that comes that when it's in the calendar, that you honor your calendar. In other words, when you make appointments, that they're hard commitments. Now, well, yeah, I'll put it in there, but if I have to change it, I'm always moving things around. Sometimes people are so flexible with their calendar that they need to schedule time to reschedule their calendar.
That's funny.
And I'm probably on the high end of those hard commitments. I can remember a couple of years ago, a BNI chapter asked if I would do a visitor day, and they said yes. And they planned it like months in advance. I'm in. And something else came up that I really wanted to do, and that was go to a BNI mastery circle. I'm like, oh, I love these things. They're so much fun. And I was like, no, I can't. This is a commitment I made. I made it with them, and I have to hold those calendar things and honor the people that made the commitment to me.
Well, Mike, that goes along with a question we have, which someone wrote. I was going to wait till the end, but I'm going to put it in here because it fits. It says, what if you block your holiday so much in advance and then something interesting like conference or a speech option pops up? What do you do?
I'm going to go to Ivan because I think Ivan's boxes is a great tool to use. Is it important? Is it urgent?
Yeah, look, if you have to ask yourself, is this important and is it urgent to you for you to change your calendar? And there have been times where I've changed my calendar. And listen, and I joke about this, and I'm sure you both have heard me talk about this. When I got invited to spend a week, and I only had like 3 weeks notice, maybe 4, and I just told you earlier I'm booked 2 years out. for speaking engagements. When I got invited to go to Necker Island and spend a week with Richard Branson, I took my calendar, whoa, go figure, I'm free, look at that. Now, luckily, I didn't have to cancel a speaking engagement because the commitment to come and do a speaking engagement is important. I changed interviews, I changed radio interviews, I changed a lot of stuff. So you gotta determine what's more important. And sometimes your spouse is like way more important than going to a conference. And so I have said no. I've said no to paid speaking engagements because I had a vacation. Because, you know, my wife is very forgiving, but at some point she wants me to be on vacation with her. So you got to figure out what's important to you.
Yeah.
Everybody keep those questions coming.
So let's move on to blocking time.
Yeah. So I think it's really important to block off time. And here it says block off think time, but let me expand that slightly. Block off time for the things that you need to do. And I would argue time to think is actually one of them. There's an old story, and I don't know how true it is, but there's an old story about, I think it was Henry Ford or no, it was Watson, the founder of IBM. And somebody, one of the executive management people complained because there was always this guy. He'd walk by his office, and he was always sitting there like this. And Watson, the executive, said, "We're paying this guy a bunch of money, and every time I walk by, he's just kind of daydreaming." And Watson said, and there's probably some truth to this, but it's a great story. Watson said, "Yeah, he sits there and he thinks through issues and ideas with me. The last idea he had saved me about $2 million. So that guy can sit there and think as much as he wants. I'm waiting for his next great idea." So I'm a real believer in blocking off time to do the things that you think important. For me, it's about thinking, it's about writing. I usually think by writing. So it's about writing out my ideas. You gotta block that off. If you don't block it off, it's never gonna happen, I promise you. If you looked at my calendar, you would see for the rest of eternity, Wednesdays, if I'm not traveling, Wednesdays are completely blocked off. This is an example. What you're looking at right now is an actual example of Wednesday where I just block off the whole day to write. Mike, you talked about making exceptions. Here's the only exception I make: interviews. So if someone wants to interview me about a book or about BNI or about Asentiv, I'll take that interview. Otherwise, I say no to everything on Wednesdays.
I've told people this before, and I don't know if they get it, but my think time is spent on a bicycle.
Yeah.
And people are like, you're always out there riding the bike, and yes, and my mind is now thinking about pedaling. I'm thinking about presentations, and I'm thinking about stuff we're working on, and I will say, some people have actually verified this with me, that different parts of the brain start working when you're working like that, and for me, it becomes more creative. Right? So that becomes my think time. Another thing with the sports,
I call this.
Go ahead, Nanette.
What I was just going to say was, for me, I call this, what am I doing for my business soul? Because it gives me the freedom to make the decision of what I'm going to be doing. And I'm with you, Mike, in the sense that I love to write on these days, and I love to do it outdoors, where I'm away from everything and just in nature, and I take my laptop and I just write. But I'm actually writing a blog right now about what are you doing for your business soul, and this is part of it. Are you blocking the time off to fill your business soul?
And so a productive space for you right there is outdoors. And, it's somewhat related. I also find there are certain times I'm more productive at certain things. For example, detail work is difficult for me. However, if I do it first thing in the morning, and first thing in the morning could be 5, 6 o'clock in the morning, I'm pretty good at it. And I'll get it done relatively quickly. And if I put it off to the afternoon, it'll take twice as long and I'll have twice as many mistakes. So even when you're blocking those times, sometimes you have to be strategic as to where you put those blocks. So, all right, let's pick up on the next topic, is allowing other people.
Can I add one quick thing onto that, Mike? So there's a really good book. It's old. It's kind of a tough read, but it's a really good book by Maxwell Maltz called Psycho-Cybernetics. And he talks about the servo mechanism of the mind and how sometimes if you block off time to ride a bike or to exercise or to do, and you're not even thinking consciously about an issue, boom, the answer to a problem comes to you while you're on the bike or while you're exercising. For me, one of those times, and this is a daily routine, is I've got a steam shower, and it's full on really good steam. I go in there every day for at least 15 minutes. And I'm telling you, I've had the most brilliant ideas sitting in a steam shower. I just wish I had I wish a Post-it note would work in a steam shower. It doesn't. But I get these brilliant ideas in the steam shower, and it's totally this concept of psycho-cybernetics. And you're right, and with you, it's riding a bike, or Nanette, with you, outside.
Right. Exactly.
Well, let's go on to other people controlling your calendar. And we're having this show today with the expectations that we're talking to entrepreneurs. So these are people that are in business for themselves and could, to a certain extent, have complete control. Now, if you're an employee, that's not always the case. There are people that you work for that may be dictating your calendar. But let's put it into the context of the entrepreneur and business owner. I still see where people allow other people to control their calendar. They sometimes their clients, sometimes their colleagues. They could even be business partners. Okay, that stop putting things into the calendar with really not only not understanding what's already in your calendar, but certainly not understanding the priorities of what you have. Now, unlike Ivan, I have a very difficult time giving up that control. Ivan, he has somebody that helps him with his calendar, and somebody actually books things for him. I can't do it. I mean, even when it comes to booking a flight, I want to book that flight around my calendar and not have somebody else, making those decisions. But Ivan, obviously that still serves you, and it actually makes you more productive.
Absolutely, it does. I would recommend it to just stick your toes in and see how it works.
I agree.
It works really well. I actually give my assistant access to my calendar, so she has complete access to my calendar. Now, sometimes there are conversations that I may be having with people that I don't want my assistant to see the content, because I'll put the content in the calendar, or she'll create the calendar item and then I'll put content in. I don't know if you know this, but you can lock a calendar item in Outlook where the person looking at your calendar doesn't have access to what's inside it. And so I do that on confidential things. But otherwise, she has complete access to my calendar. She can book things in for me. And I got to tell you, it's way easier. Now, here's a possibility. I don't really personally like this a lot, but people use it, and a lot of people like it. There's an automated calendar system. There's several of them. And you might consider trying the automated calendar system, where you're basically saying to someone, here's my calendar for next week. These are the open spots. Pick one. And it's all automated. And I forget, do you guys know what?
That's what I actually use that, Ivan. I use Time Trade, and it's very inexpensive. It's like $78 a year. It might be a little bit more now, but it's like $78 a year. And I actually love it because I do have it's an icon right on my emails, and also I can send them to my website, and they can go to the bottom and they can get to it. And because I have to tell you, I'm horrible when someone says, let's do it in my phone. I never tend to do it right, and this way I know it ends up correctly in my calendar. The key is you have to make sure that you are constantly aware of what's going on in your calendar. Yeah. Because the thing I could run into is that someone in Kentucky may want to meet with me in 1 hour, and someone in Ohio may want to meet with me in the second hour, and there's no way in some cases that I can drive that way. So I've either got to say, well, you're going to come to me, or I have to change it. So
Yeah.
now,
So what's it called? Time trade?
yeah, it's called Time Trade, and I actually do really like it. You can put your logo in there. You can customize it. You can do some great things with it.
So, hey, Mike, start with that. Give that a shot.
Maybe
When I get
one
those
day.
things, I even turn those over to my assistant and say, all right, here's the spots. And I'll tell you why, because I don't want to go through hour by hour and then cross-check it against my pretty full calendar. So I even hand that over to my assistant. But I would start with that, Mike. The technology has come a long way.
Yeah.
All right, we're at a quarter till, and I know we have one more
Yeah.
topic. Let's do it, and then we're gonna open it up. So I think it's really important to keep margins. I build secret margins. Yes, there are secret margins into my calendar. And one of the secret margins that I have into my calendar is if I'm talking to someone and they say, look, I only need 15 minutes, seriously 15 minutes, I block off a half hour. If they say we can do this in 30 minutes, I block off an hour. I do it very consistently. And they'll say, no, all I need is 30 minutes. I'll say, okay, fine, and 30 minutes, we're on. But I block off an hour in my calendar. That does two things. First of all, if they run over a little bit, they'll say, oh, I know this is taking longer than I said. And I'll say, hey, it's okay, I've got a little more time. And I can go over time with them. If we finish in 30 minutes, then I got 30 minutes free. People think, Ivan, how do you respond to, so I'm giving you the secret because I know you always ask this question, Mike, how do you respond so quickly to email? They're my secret margins. I block off time, and in the time that's unused, that's when I jump onto email and respond to people as quickly as possible. So keep margins and keep them secret. Now my assistant knows about them, but nobody else does.
Except all of us now.
Except now you all know. I know. I just.
And
ahead,
doing this from Beth, Ivan, part of her margins is she margins in there travel time.
Yeah.
Workout, shower.
Yep.
So that time that she needs set up for an event. Okay, when the event opens, the after event time, and so all of those margins go in, even though it may be booked for an hour, she knows she's going to need 2.
So if anyone goes back and watches this video, you'll see on the very first screen where I had the color coding, you'll actually see sort of a purple color that says trip to airport or something like that. I put that in as well, and I train my assistant. For example, if my flight is at 9 o'clock, she has been known in the beginning. Almost all my assistants have set up a phone call at, I don't know, 7 o'clock or 8 o'clock or whatever. I mean, that's getting late, but let's make it in the middle of the day. If I have a flight at 5, maybe they'll do a phone call for me at 4, and I'll like, so where am I going to do that phone call? I'm like, what do you mean? You don't, oh, that's right, you fly. So I have them now block off a couple of hours, including driving to the airport and time at the airport, where I'm not, I don't have to do something online necessarily. Yeah, gotta block that in. Keep margins.
And Ivan, someone put up the question here of, can you repeat the 4 quadrants again? And I believe they're actually talking about what your quadrants were for color coding.
So no, those are 2 different things. The color coding, you can make it up. In Outlook, there's a spot where it has categories. So you take those categories and you can put in, they're basically blank with colors, and so you can put in the category that you have. So I made up all these categories: writing, PR, strategic planning. You can create your own. The quadrants is urgent, and important. So on the one quadrant, it's urgent and important. In the other quadrant, it's urgent and not important. And then below that is not urgent but important, and not urgent and not important. If you just do a search on Google for urgent and important, you'll see graphics of those.
Awesome. We do have one more question before we close out here, and we have, do you put your goals on your calendar so that you can review your progress on a monthly basis and make adjustments?
No, I do it daily.
And mine's not in the calendar.
Um,
I'm a spreadsheet guy.
yeah, and our goals are also spreadsheet. I don't do, see, one of the things, and you're the one who I know has been saying this a long time, Mike, know your numbers. Really know your numbers. And so the goals that I have, I then reverse engineer and take a look at how I track it by month, but I look at the numbers daily. I could tell you that as of yesterday morning, we had 8,138 chapters of BNI, 224,643 members. I look at the numbers daily.
Awesome. Awesome.
Okay.
Well, are there any final comments you want to make before we go backstage?
Well, my final comment is I really think that calendaring is the formula for success. And although Ivan and I have some opinions on what we do that may not apply, if there are things that do resonate with you that you think are applicable, please take advantage of using them, but may not be everything.
Agreed. I couldn't say it any better. Let's. I'm good with going behind the stage, I think you call it.
Okay, so before we do that, I just want to tell everybody, I want to thank you all for coming today and enjoying this. This is going to be put up in Facebook and will be also on the YouTube Asentiv page. So please go in, you can rewatch it, and feel free to share this because we just want to change the lives of the world. So we really want to help you. November,
can I just say one other thing when you're done? Go ahead with the November.
Okay, so in November, we have another great topic from two great people, Dawn Lyons and Mike Macedonio. They're going to be actually talking about public speaking. So if you have any apprehensions about public speaking, this is your opportunity to come and learn how you can get over that and learn some tips on great public speaking. And I'm actually going to tell you about December's too, so you can plan. December's is going to be another great one too. It's going to be about marketing during the holidays, because the holidays for some people can be a really slow time. So we actually have two great topics. November is on the 16th and December is on the 21st. Same time, same place. And Ivan, I'll let you say the last thing before we move on to the next
For people
backstage.
watching this, thank you. For people watching this video, what we do now is we go, what do we call it? Behind the scene, behind the stage, but yes. Behind the stage. We go behind the stage. So we're going to now talk for a few minutes and answer questions from everybody. So if you want to get behind the stage with us, you got to be on live, because we stopped the recording here, and so you got to be on live. So come on live next time.
Awesome. Hey, everybody. Have a great rest of your month and week, and we can't wait to see you next month. So thank you very much. Mike and Ivan, we'll see you backstage.
Great. Thanks.
You're welcome.